Well, we officially have a state of emergency as more U.S. troops are headed towards the Middle East. We now know that more military equipment is heading to the Middle East as well as war escalates in the region. Today I want to break down what's going on, why experts are highly concerned, and what Kamala Harris just did that is potentially putting the United States at risk. So I'm going to break all this down in just a moment, but all I ask is one thing. Takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now let's begin. So look at this right here. The Israeli government declares nationwide state of emergency. But why? Well, it has to do with the missiles going from Israel to attack Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. But look at this. The United States is now sending more troops to the Middle East as violence rises between Israel and Hezbollah. Now, here's where things get very interesting. The United States is going to send more troops. Okay, look at this right here. It says U.S. sending small number of troops to Middle East as attacks ramp up. The troops would add to the 40,000 American forces already in the region. Now, I got a lot of people asking what I am talking about. Why are there 40,000 American troops already in the Middle East? Why are they already in the region? Because if you remember, I'm going to play you this clip really quick just so you get an idea. But look at this. This is from when former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris debated. Listen to this.
As of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century.
Okay. So she said there is not one active duty military member in a combat zone. It's the first time in this century. Wow, that's incredible, right? Well, here's the reason why what she said is actually not false. What Kamala Harris said, okay, that there is not one single member in an active duty military zone. Okay? What is considered a military zone or combat zone or war zone, if you will? Well, it requires a presidential executive order in order for that to be true. President Biden has not issued an executive order to declare that region, okay, Israel, southern Lebanon, they haven't issued that. So that technically is not a combat zone. That's the only reason why what she said was true. Now, I want to read a little bit of this to you. Okay? Why is the United States sending more troops to the Middle East? Again, violence continues to rise. The tensions over in the area are increasing. There's a high likelihood of a war in the area. But here's what you need to keep in mind. If the U.S. gets involved between Israel and Hezbollah, Iran has vowed to respond. Iran has, and again, I brought this up many times, that Hezbollah has sleeper cells here in the United States. There is a high likelihood we see some type of an attack here on U.S. soil before or potentially right after the presidential election. That is on November 5th. Now, according to experts, they say there is a higher likelihood we see an attack sometime between November 5th and January 1st. It's likely not going to happen before, but again, I bring this to your attention because of one thing. If Kamala Harris wins the upcoming election, then there's a higher chance that we dip into a war moving forward. Why? Because many world leaders feel that Kamala Harris is not the one that would be able to guide us through a war. She just couldn't do it. With that said, if former President Donald Trump wins, many world leaders believe the United States would be safer than we have been over the past 3.5 to 4 years. So we'll see what happens moving forward. I want to read a little bit of this article to you though. Look at this. It says the U.S. is sending a small number of additional troops to the Middle East in response to a sharp spike in violence between Israel and Hezbollah forces in Lebanon that has raised the risk of a greater regional war. It says Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder would provide no details on how many additional forces or what they would be tasked to do. The U.S. currently has about 40,000 troops in the region. It says on Monday, the aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman, 2 Navy destroyers, and a cruiser set sail from Norfolk, Virginia, headed to the 6th Fleet area in Europe on a regularly scheduled deployment. The ship's departure opens up the possibility that the U.S. could keep both the Truman and the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, which is in the Arabian Gulf, in the region in case more violence breaks out. Now, I want to read this one statement to you. It says, in light of increased tensions in the Middle East and out of an abundance of caution, we are sending a small number of additional U.S. military personnel forward to augment our forces that are already in the region. But for operational security reasons, I'm not going to comment on or provide specifics. Okay, here's where things get interesting. We already have 40,000 troops in the region. They say we're going to increase the number, we're going to send a small number of additional U.S. military personnel. What would the United States be sending over there? Why would it be so dire and needed at this time? Why do we need additional personnel? And what's the small number? Because again, 40,000 is a pretty substantial number. Are we going to send 10,000? I doubt it. Are we going to send 5,000? Possibly. But what are those 5,000 going to be tasked with? What is their responsibility once they get there? Well, that's what we're going to find out. But what's interesting about this is what's happening at this time. Look at this. It says U.S. State Department urges citizens to leave Lebanon while commercial flights remain available. And then you got this article right here that says U.S. asks Israel to ensure safety of Americans in Lebanon if they are evacuated. But what's interesting is I've seen all over X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, I've seen so many different pictures and videos of people trying to leave the region. Right? Streets backed up. Look at this right here. Okay, I just want to show you this. Okay, look at all those cars just lined up. Okay? But they're saying that there's major traffic jams in the area because people are trying to get out of the city. That's what's happening. Okay? And so again, this is troubling. What we are seeing is troubling. Now I want to show you something else. It says on Monday, Lebanon and Israel witnessed the most intense fighting between the Israel Defense Forces and Hezbollah since the 2006 war. It says at least 274 people were killed and more than 1,000 wounded in the most massive wave of Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon in decades. Well, according to more recent reports, the number is actually 400 plus that people have lost their lives. Why? Because Israel continues to strike at Hezbollah and Hezbollah returns the fire. That's what we're seeing. Now, I want to read this to you. Okay? It says more than 450 people were killed and 1,600 others were injured as Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon on Monday, officials said, marking the deadliest day of strikes from Israel in the country since the 2006 war. Again, over 450 people have lost their lives. But here's why I think this is interesting. We are now having Kamala Harris send more troops over to the United States, or from the United States over to the Middle East. Why? Isn't this just going to increase the tensions we have between the United States and Iran? Yeah. Could this increase the tensions between Russia and the United States? Yeah. Could this increase tensions between China and the United States? Absolutely. Because those countries are going to ask, why is the United States diving into this potential war, this conflict at this time? What is the United States' goal? What is our plan? Are we ever going to pull out of that region? Well, again, I'm bringing this to your attention because right now we have more questions than we have answers. And it doesn't seem like U.S. officials are going to give us any answers anytime soon. But here's the thing I find most interesting. We are now seeing, and again, I talked earlier today about the the troops headed up to Alaska, talked about the ships going up to Alaska as well, off the coast of Alaska, to protect against any potential Russian danger. But why are we only hearing about this from outside sources? We're not hearing about this from U.S. officials. We aren't hearing about this from President Biden, from Kamala Harris. But why? Are they trying to bury the news? Are they trying to keep this a secret for the next 60-some days or whatever, and then once we have the presidential election, which is actually in less than 60-some days, it's like, 50 days or less? Yeah, that's what experts believe, that the Biden administration and all involved are trying to keep this a secret, trying to prevent a war from happening, from blowing up in their face right before a massive election. So we've seen this back when President Biden was having some health issues, and many people from the White House were questioning whether or not he was fit and healthy enough to even lead the country for another couple months, let alone another 4 years. And then Democrats and Kamala Harris herself said, no, he's perfectly fine. He's the healthiest he's ever been. But then, just weeks later, he decided he had to withdraw. That's what he decided. So I think this is interesting, what we're seeing at this time. Why are American troops being deployed over to the Middle East? Why are we sending additional military equipment over to the region? Why is it needed? I'm curious what they see happening, what the Pentagon is keeping from us, but the one thing I can tell you is I will keep you updated with everything. As soon as we get more information, I will provide you with those updates as soon as possible. Because again, we as American people cannot be kept in the dark. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Again, I will be here every step of the way, and I'll fill you in on all the latest news and updates. But as of today, that is what we know. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.